I really love Dead by Daylight, but it is far from a perfect game. Whether it be brought by the game's mechanics, monetization, or player base, there always seems to be some very visible flaws that ruin this game. And with the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter set to release this summer, those flaws really need to be addressed. Some people are expecting this new update coming in June to make or break Dead by Daylight. The developers have already addressed what kind of health updates they're planning for the future of the game. With that being said, this video is going to serve as a sort of compilation and list of all the things that I feel put Dead by Daylight in a negative light. As a disclaimer, I'm not a professional Dead by Daylight player by any means, I'm fairly casual, but I have put a lot of time and money into this game over the years I've played it, starting on console and moving to PC later once cross progression was added. I find Dead by Daylight really enjoyable, I still have fun with it to this day, but that doesn't make me blind to the many flaws that it has. With that out of the way, I hope you enjoy the video. To start off, I'm going to be taking a look at the actual mechanics of the game. I'll get to the parts surrounding the game later, but I think taking a look at the game for what it is a good starting point. One of the major issues with Dead by Daylight's gameplay is the balancing. I'm not just talking about the perks you can bring into the game, I'm talking about the actual characters that you get to play. This is mainly an issue that resides within the killer side of things, with survivors having much less difference between each other in comparison to the killers. Not all killers are created equal in this game, which should be obvious and may not seem like a huge deal when considering all asymmetric games of this scope. Dead by Daylight has 39 killers and it's about to reach its 40th with the release of the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter. So there's no way that all these killers can be perfectly balanced. But there's a lot of killers that are way too overtuned, and there are some in comparison that are just basically useless. Take for example the Trapper. This killer has been banished to the bottom of tier lists for so long, and he's not set to be freed from that hell anytime soon. There's nothing particularly wrong with the Trapper, but he's in kind of a noob stomper limbo. See, he's really good when it comes to outplaying survivors that are new to the game. He's a character that's pretty easy to play, but very difficult to master, or what I should be saying is difficult to play against masters, because this killer is outclassed very easily. He has very little chase potential and relies on a lot of setup that can be easily erased if you have any survivors that know what they're doing. The niche he fulfills has no place in the higher ranks of Dead by Daylight, which a large majority of players end up residing in. I don't think that there's anything particularly wrong with having bad characters in games, but Dead by Daylight has so many killers that are locked behind paywalls, and all those killers seem to be better. Luckily, the nurse, a killer you don't have to pay for, is one of the best in the game, but even then, her being outrageously good is still something that should not be looked at in a great light. Having killers that are way better than the majority of the rest of the killers, like the nurse or the blight, creates a sense of really repetitive gameplay that survivors have to endure when looking for lobbies in this game. One of the most common killers that's found in the game's lobbies right now is the Ghoul, the newest addition to the game. And even then, he's considered to be a quote-unquote better version of the Legion, a different paid killer. With killers being so easily outclassed by just one more addition to the game, it turns this cast of 39 unique characters into basically like 4.5. Balancing is a really hard thing to do in a game, and personally, I don't think it's fair to expect that every single killer is going to be just as powerful as each other. Sadly, it's just not the case in any multiplayer game, but I'm sure that most players can agree that it's really exhausting to see the same few killers bring the same few perks to every single match. And speaking of the perks, they're an issue in their own. Including both survivor and killer perks, Dead by Daylight has over 270 perks to choose from. With this staggering number of variety that can be made, considering that every killer and survivor has 4 perk slots, 2 add-on slots, and survivors get to bring in a unique item every match, how come I see survivors and killers alike bringing the same few perks to every single match? There's a few different strategies you can have with survivors, but it all boils down to the same few perks usually. But since it changes a bit if you're playing solo queue or survivor with friends, and plus I'm a killer main, I'm going to be sticking with the killer side of things when it comes to perks, and I might mention the survivors down the line, it's just that I'm not as adept in that field. But the very obvious repetitive meta of perks in Dead by Daylight is a blight in it, pun intended. It seems that every killer in mid to high rank Dead by Daylight brings the same few perks. Think about it. If you play the game frequently enough, when's the last time you played against a killer, or hell, played as a killer, that didn't bring Rapid Brutality, or Corrupt Intervention, or Grim Embrace, or Surge, or Pain Resonance? Hey, I'm guilty of it too. I always bring one of those perks with me because I know it's reliable. I basically main Singularity, although I'm kind of switching to the Ghoul right now, but Singularity is a really good Rapid Brutality killer, and all the killers I tend to shift towards end up being them too. Freddy is really good with Rapid Brutality as well, arguably being one of the best users of it in the game. And Pain Resonance is just such a good perk that takes the stress out of kicking every generator you see. And it's not that other perks aren't good. I still see plenty of killers try and use Hex builds that are really, really good. Hex Pentimento was just nerfed for being kind of busted. And it's not that survivors don't have the tools necessary to outplay some really powerful perks. They have some pretty hefty perks of their own with Background Player or Live. It's just that when there's very obvious perks that are just so good, it's hard to want to use any other ones when you can't really argue with the results you're getting. Making different perk builds is one of my favorite things to do in Dead by Daylight. I know one when Vecna came out was Weave Attunement and Franklin's Demise. It's a pretty fun build that lets people read auras from across the map, and it's pretty reliable too. But you won't see a ton of people run stuff like that because perks like Corrupt Intervention and Rapid Brutality are just so reliable, and you can't argue with the results that they give you. Do I think that these perks need to be nerfed? Maybe, but I just want people to open up their minds to other perks too. I do think that buffs might bloat the game a little bit and make just certain plays clearly impossible, but I think that a recent change that they're planning to make might be a step in the wrong direction. In a recent public test build of the game, the developers are planning to change the way that haste perks work in a really drastic way, and I don't think it's healthy for the game at all. Although it is a test build and things can be changed, what they're planning on is making it so that haste, an effect that speeds you up, will not stack between perks, and instead it will just go with the highest one. This kills synergy. Instead of swapping out, let's say, Surge for something like a different haste perk, players are going to look at it and think, nah, this isn't going to be as good if I just bring Rapid. Rapid Brutality is such a good perk, I shouldn't need to bring any other haste ones if I know it's not going to stack. I'm sure that if it's that much of an issue, they're not going to add it to the game, but I am really concerned. I understand that for new players, it's probably really hard to play against a killer that ends up being way faster than you expected, but I also think it's probably way easier to play against that than the same few perks that dominate these lobbies every single time. And that's not even talking about how these perks are also locked behind paywalls largely. You can get the perks for free if you want to spend your hard-earned iridescent shards on them, but all these perks and killers and survivors are sold with DLC that if you spend $8 or something on it, you'll get everything. And if the characters are licensed, you don't even have an opportunity to buy these characters with in-game currency. It makes the game, blatantly put, pay to win. There are a few ways that you can get perks for free that don't rely on you spending real-life money or sinking an insane amount of time into the game, but I think that these mechanics are outdated. I think that a lot of stuff in Dead by Daylight is really outdated. Specifically the way that you unlock and start using some of the in-game items or perks. The main thing that I think is pretty outdated that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is the Shrine of Secrets. The Shrine of Secrets, if for some reason you don't know, is a way that you can get some perks that you don't have unlocked on other killers yet. The way you normally would get perks is you'd have to go to the Blood Web, the upgrade system for each killer, and unlock the perks there by leveling a killer up to level 50, and then they'd start appearing on all other killers. But on the Shrine of Secrets, you don't even have the DLC that the perk belongs to. You buy it for a significantly discounted price in in-game currency, and then you get it for every killer or survivor. This refreshes weekly and only has 3 perks at a time. When the game has like over 270 perks, this is not okay. 3 perks a week and a chance for them to overlap and just sometimes having to wait because you don't want to buy a DLC that you're not going to play. Just waiting ages and ages for one perk to appear just because it's meta and everyone else is using it is so stupid. They need some way that lets you buy perks that isn't just spending real money or waiting weeks and weeks. I don't have the answer to it, but I just think that there's probably something that I hope they're workshopping at this point, especially since they've talked about the Blood Web. The Blood Web is also very outdated. It takes so long to do something that the game insists that you do a lot in bulk. They even have a way that makes you level up faster if you just click on the middle of the web and auto gets stuff for you. But even that takes forever. Especially when you have like 2 million blood points racked up after a bunch of games. It's not hard to get blood points, but it's even harder to spend them. It turns progressing in the game into a chore. Don't get me wrong, I like the blood web. I think it's satisfying, it's fun, I like that there's some kind of thinking to it of what items I want to get or which ones will disappear. But the fact that there's just no way to press a button and then it gives me rewards and I have to watch this long animation every single time is so annoying. I think it's really weird how while the game evolves its gameplay and mechanics and maps, the menu navigation and ways that you unlock certain things just remain the same. I really don't like how this slog starts even before you get into a match. With the queue times already being long enough, the last thing I want to do is stare at a blood web and just constantly click the middle of it. I've heard of people even using auto clickers and just putting their mouse over the middle of the blood web while they walk away from their PC and do something worth more of their time than waiting in a queue for 5 minutes. Dead by Daylight, more than most things, I think, needs a massive overhaul in the way its progression works. And they're already taking a bite at this, changing the way that quests work to be a much more modernized and streamlined process. And in an interview, they recently said that they're going to be working on making the blood web even faster. I'm still upset I haven't heard anything from the Shrine of Secrets, but, you know, we take these. All the issues I'm going to be discussing from here on out are more so related to the community aspect of the game rather than the gameplay. One of the things that a lot of people complain about, myself included, is the steep price point of the game. Dead by Daylight's $20 base game only comes with the handful of the killers that the game actually has, and it has over $300 in DLC. This makes the full game, if you want the entire experience, extremely expensive. On top of that, all the cosmetics are like a lot of money, and that's in order to keep the DLC prices down of being $8 or something each. While it is extremely steep, and I don't like it, I understand why they have to do things like this, especially if they have to pay for expensive licenses, and to prevent this next issue that I think plagues the game a lot more than a high price point. Cheaters in Dead by Daylight are easily the most detrimental part of the game, partially because half the time they're not even subtle, like at all. Cheaters in Dead by Daylight are infamously annoying and like just trying to play it out and get attention. Sometimes cheaters in this game will try to hide the fact that they're cheating. Take this clip from Hens, for example, popular Dead by Daylight creator.
On a chosen tour. Actually, I got a free ad, nice. I saw this guy's cheating.
At this moment, I knew that they were cheating, and Hens did too. But the average player probably wouldn't notice this. The survivor is gaining way more speed than they should have whenever they're cutting a corner. This is so they can hide the fact that they're speed hacking. A lot of cheaters end up doing this, until they stop. Later in this match, the cheater stopped Hens from hooking them, literally blocking it with a special prompt to quote-unquote sabotage the hook while Hens is trying to hook them. Some other cheaters literally just get into a match and immediately kill everybody, just straight up making the game completely unplayable. On top of that, they hard target streamers and have a way to filter out streamers from non-streamers. It's a massive play for attention, and I don't need to really talk about it anymore since it's just gonna feed into what they want. The reason this is such an issue, and the reason why it's happening at all, is because Dead by Daylight went free to play for a brief period on Epic Games, and that made it so that a ton of people can get extra accounts so they wouldn't have to worry about being banned. Now, cheaters are a problem basically forever. If Dead by Daylight goes free to play again, I'm terrified of what it could mean for the actual player base. Anti-cheat is a hard thing to implement, as you can see by things like, you know, TF2. But eventually TF2 did resolve their issue, and I'm hoping that Dead by Daylight can as well. Although I do think this game might be held together with toothpicks and soap. Hens did a really good video on cheating in Dead by Daylight, and I really suggest you watch that for an in-depth look at it. This is just a brief mention of it, since it is a way more in-depth issue that is affecting streamers way more than it is affecting me, who is just making video essays and playing the game casually. Another issue I've talked about kind of extensively in another video essay is leaks. Dead by Daylight has one of the worst leaking communities like ever. Of course I'll sum it up here, but if you are at all interested in the leaking community of Dead by Daylight and why leaks are bad in general for most games, you can watch my other video essay, which I'll link in the description, and put in a card at the top, if I remember. But in short, without talking about specific figures in the community or ranting about leaking in general, leaks portray the developers of the game in a way worse light in my opinion. A lot of people involved in the community tend to think that Behavior, the guys that made Dead by Daylight, don't market their chapters at all, and that's why leaks are happening. And I think that's kind of back-asswards. There's a lot of reasons why it's the other way around. If a chapter's leaked, there's no need to really market it that much. Since everyone already knows about it or is gonna find out about it through someone else, they shouldn't need to waste their money on marketing, especially when they didn't even want that information to be known in the first place. This can be seen for chapters in comparison to the Tokyo Ghoul one. Right now, the Tokyo Ghoul one that just came out wasn't really advertised or built up in a way with teasers or anything. Just kind of revealed and then talked about. But then take a look at All Things Wicked, the chapter that introduced the Unknown and Sable Ward, with a ton of really cool teasers that made it out to be some kind of found footage film, kind of like Blair Witch. All Things Wicked got this kind of marketing because it wasn't leaked. Tokyo Ghoul, which is arguably more hype since it's licensed and it's the first official, like, full anime chapter in Dead by Daylight, didn't get anything. It just got an announcement once the release date was set, and then a conference once it was revealed in Japan. Leaks are such a detriment to the developers of the game, and the community is only making it worse. There's tons of people that just go around spreading false rumors and spreading misinformation wherever they go. And plenty of it is straight up disinformation, where it's just straight up trolling and spreading these fake rumors that people are going to argue about for the foreseeable future. Okay, I'm actually adding this part after I finished writing the script and recording everything else. Behavior has recently started taking down posts that are talking about leaks for Dead by Daylight on Reddit via copyright claims. This is a huge step for Dead by Daylight because I really hope that it means that they'll be able to get their good marketing back. It is kind of fueling people to think that things like Dead Space and whatnot are getting put into Dead by Daylight because a bunch of posts that were talking about potential future chapters for Dead by Daylight were taken down because they claimed that they were leaks. I think that this speculation is healthy, but I don't like that it's coming from copyright strikes. But now that we're talking about the speculative part of the community, I think that it's about time we talk about the community as a whole. Since the majority of Dead by Daylight players tend to be more competitive than casual, the community tends to have some toxic sides to it. The community, from my experience, tends to pick issues out from the game and then attack them not constructively at all, which doesn't seem too out of the ordinary for gaming communities, but Dead by Daylight really gets on my nerves. One of the main examples I see a ton, and it's extremely relevant because of the Tokyo Ghoul chapter, is when players who didn't want Tokyo Ghoul as a chapter see that it came to the game, they say that it's not fitting for Dead by Daylight and is actively ruining the game just by it existing. You could say what you want about the gameplay of the chapter and the changes to the balancing, but just because the chapter is from an anime and manga series doesn't make it any less valid to be added to this game that features a collection of horror and scary icons. Ken Kaneki deserves to be in Dead by Daylight just as much as any of the original killers. You can't tell me that Skull Merchant's more deserving to be in Dead by Daylight just because she's an original chapter. And that's not me saying that the Skull Merchant isn't fitting for the game, it's me saying that people tend to have a double standard when it's from media that they haven't indulged in or don't like. Toxicity of the community isn't just localized on social media either. Because there's pre- and post-game chat in Dead by Daylight, tons of survivors will badmouth you or call out wild accusations or just slurs and whatnot because you're playing the game with an intended mechanic. There are some toxic uses of mechanics like slugging or tunneling and stuff like that, but sometimes the game genuinely calls for things that might seem a bit unfun. But that's a fundamental flaw of the kind of game and not because of the player. I'm not saying it can't be the player, but a lot of times when people are calling camping or tunneling toxic, how often is it that the killer intended it in a toxic way? If you watch a lot of high-level gameplay that has a bunch of these things like tunneling or slugging, it's probably because the killers need to do it to win. You can be upset by the inclusion of this, or if a killer is insistent on doing these annoying mechanics, sure. But saying slurs and death threats in the post-game chat, or even accusing someone of hacking for perks that they bring, is just extremely toxic. People also tend to weaponize these game mechanics. I hate calling tunneling a mechanic, but it basically is at this point. But tons of people get tunneled for the charms that they bring, being little pride flags and whatnot, just because people are so insanely homophobic sometimes. The most upsetting part to me is that the developers are actively trying to make the game a better place for people. They're letting people bring their own pride flag charms to the game, and they're constantly adding new cosmetics and characters that people can find themselves in. But from what I can see, all their additions just end up dividing the community even more and just start arguments on whether it's fitting for the game or if they have a problem with it or not. New additions to any game aren't without controversy, but Dead by Daylight's community especially makes it really hard to be excited for the new things the game's gonna offer. I know this video has been overly negative, and I really hate being overly negative, but I don't think I'm saying anything without merit. I love Dead by Daylight. I think this game is super fun, and I think over the course of the years this game has been out, it has gotten more fun. The new events they've introduced into the game, and along with the new game modes too, they're all great. It makes the game so much better. The new chapters are more polished, they're constantly outdoing themselves, and the developers, thanks to how they've been treating the game and how they appear in interviews, really care about this game. This isn't something they want to abandon at all, and they don't want us to feel this negatively about the game. You might see that I didn't bring up Skull Merchant at all, except for comparing it to something in the community, but that's because I already know that they're trying to fix Skull Merchant. They did a bad decision by nerfing her to the ground so she's borderline unusable, just because she was busted, but they've already posted and been super transparent about what they plan for her, and they're accepting community feedback on that even before a public test build is out. That shows how much they care and how much they want to make the player base love the game as much as they do. I know right now and throughout the course of Dead by Daylight's history, it's kind of hard to see good things about it, but there's a lot of fun things you can still get out of this game. Take any of the most popular content creators in Dead by Daylight right now, for example. They're constantly doing challenges and running unique builds and whatnot just to keep playing the game more. Dead by Daylight wouldn't have as big of a community that it does if people weren't holding out hope that this game is going to keep getting better and better. I'm sure there's plenty of issues I neglected to mention or left out, so please, if you have anything you want to share about the game, good or bad, leave it in the comments below. I love getting constructive criticism, and I also love hearing from people on what they think of my videos and the content I cover. I plan on making more videos in this style, and I also plan on streaming soon as well. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. I make other content like this all the time, and I hope you'll stick around to see more of my videos. Thanks for watching.